So welcome to this week in which our interest is literature and education. Interest is literature and education, and so far from being entertainment, literature serves as a pedagogical tool that reflects societal values and critiques systemic failures. So literature is not just entertainment, as some may imagine. Literature serves other roles apart from just being interesting and entertaining. So in African context, literature has historically functioned as a vital instrument of decolonization and self-appraisal, bridging the gap between traditional oral wisdom and modern academic discourse. Yeah, so literature plays a very, very important role in the modern society. So Chinua Achebe, a foundational figure in this movement, famously argued that the African writer should be a teacher. So according to Achebe, the African writer is a teacher. So for Achebe, the instructive role of literature is paramount. So in fact, is against what we call the art for art's sake paradigm by Bloom's. We looked at Bloom's in the it must have been the second lecture. So in the African setting, literature has an instructional value, and that's why literature intersects with education to a great extent. That's why most of us who take literature, we find ourselves servicing education departments all over the world. So what are our ELOs? To evaluate the didactic function of literature by comparing classical philosophical views on moral instruction with Achebe's assertion that the writer must serve as a teacher. Analyze literature as a vehicle for social values, specifically how African narratives utilize the content and form to inculcate essential cultural ethics such as patriotism. Then appraise David Mulua's inheritance as a critique of contemporary values such as greed and materialism, and critique the intersection of oral literature and ethical values, explaining how African fables and proverbs function as pedagogical frameworks that teach problem solving and other values. So in Africa, for example, look at oral literature, one of its major functions is for education purposes. And that's why literature is very important in education. But we cannot forget classical philosophers such as Plato. According to Plato, literature is not just a story, but rather a form of mimesis or imitation that shapes the soul of the listener. That literature has the ability to affect our soul, and change it. That's why Plato was very keen on the content of literature. According to Plato, literature should not just, have vices. It must have the moral features that inculcate values in the audiences. So according to Plato, literature should inculcate living values. Believe that literature should only be permitted if it promotes living values like courage, temperance, and justice. He feared that depicting gods and heroes as flawed would lead the youth to imitate those vices. And so, according to Plato, a writer should not represent religious figures in the negative and then achievers or leaders in the negative. So for Plato, the educational value of literature is measured by its ability to align the individual's emotions with the rational needs of the state. And that is why his theory is called Plato's theory of moral criticism. It is used today to censor literary works. And that's why if you have to write for high school, your work will be censored to see whether the morals are well expressed. And this was established by Plato around 450 BC. So according to Plato, again, literature is important for education. So for Plato, literature was a primary vehicle for paideia. Paideia means the education of the ideal citizen. So he viewed the poet as a competitor to the philosopher in the quest to define truth and morality. When he says a poet, he's also talking about a literary artist, that the literary artist is very key in the inculcation of morality, asserting that art must be strictly censored to ensure it serves the pedagogical needs of the state. Yeah, so for the state to inculcate education, art should contribute, and that's why it has to be censored to ensure that the values being expressed will reinforce the ideology of the state. So literature is a primary form of moral and psychological conditioning. It's a primary form of moral and psychological conditioning. Stories are not just meant for mere entertainment, but as a means of character formation, as a means of character formation. So Plato saw literature as a means, as a means of educating audiences. And I think to a great extent, I agree with him. Because of reading literature, there are some of the perspectives I used to have that have really changed. Personally, there are some ideologies that I have learned through literature. I've gained ideologies or even scientific paradigms that I've acquired through the reading of literature. That's the last time I've been saying that literature has ideologies through which we learn. Even feminism, much as sometimes we are critical of feminism, but through reading feminist works, most men have changed and they cannot just abuse women the way they used to because of reading works of literature. So literature is a form of education, and that is something that we have to appreciate. Then we have John Dewey, another very powerful philosopher is John Dewey. What did John Dewey say? According to John Dewey, literature has living values through the concept of art as experience. Unlike some people who see art as a remote and aesthetic object, Dewey argued that literature is a vital social medium. According to Dewey, literature expands the human experience by allowing individuals to live through the perspectives of others. That when you read a work of art, you learn through the perspective of the artist and the perspective of the characters. So this promotes empathy and social integration. That as you learn literature, there are elements of empathy which we acquire. There are elements of empathy which we acquire that we are able to develop sensitivity to others and a lot of empathy. So this promotes empathy and it makes, therefore, learners to be sensitive to others. So values like humility and sensitivity to others are acquired. So in his seminal work, Democracy and Education, Dewey argued that the role of literature in school is not just to learn facts, but to provide imaginative vision. Imagine you are Othello. Imagine you are Rasian. Imagine you are that character. You are Shylock. You see, so that imaginative vision enables us to learn through the perspectives of others. So he saw literature as a tool for communication that breaks down the barriers between different social classes and backgrounds. We are exposed to the rich are exposed to the poor are exposed to the rich, and we are able to understand the experiences of people across classes. So it makes literature an essential instrument for moral and civic growth. Then we have our own Chinua Achebe. What does he say about literature? According to Achebe, the novelist is a teacher. According to Achebe, the novelist is a teacher. So in this seminar, he said the novelist is as a teacher in Nexus 5. Chinua Achebe argues that in a post-colonial context, literature cannot afford the luxury of art for art's sake. Instead, it must serve as a fundamental education purpose. So Achebe rejects Bloom's argument that literature is just meant for beauty. According to Achebe, literature must have an instructive value. For example, he comes up with a number of tenets that literature to serve as an instructive medium. One, cultural reclamation. Achebe asserts that the primary role of the novelist is to help the African society regain belief in itself. that we're able to reclaim our cultural pedestal. So he aims to counter the colonial narrative that portrayed African history as a long night of savagery. So by depicting the complexity of dignity of pre-colonial societies, the novelist teaches readers that their past was not a void. So through literature, we are able to inform African audiences that our past was not just dark savagery. It was not a vacuum. It was not just empty. So through novel writing, by reading the novel, we are able to reclaim our cultural pedestal. And when you look at things fall apart, he's trying to argue that Africa had a civilization. Yeah, Africa had a civilization. Look at River Between, you see the same, that we had a religion. We had our own religion, that we were not just a dark past. So we are able to reclaim our cultural pedestal. Then we have the writer as a social member. Through literature, we learn that the literary writer is a social member. Achebe rejects the Western notion of the alienated writer, that the writer is not just alienated on the fringes of society, but Achebe believes that the African writer is an integral part of the community, burdened with the duty to address its specific psychological and the social needs. That as we write, and when we write about our society, and our books become set books, they are read by students, and we address them. Through that, we are trying to reject the notion that the writer is just a sick person, a self which is fragmented and operates from the periphery of society. Then correction of distortions. Yeah, a writer has a role of unlearning, helping the audience to unlearn. So the novelist must act as a corrective force against the dehumanizing stereotypes found in the European literature. Achebe views his work as a tool to show that African people did not hear of culture from Europeans, that culture, religion, they were not introduced by Europeans. That is what the writer Chinua Achebe tries to say in Novelist as a teacher. Then the restoration of human dignity. So through education, in Achebe's view, we are able to restore our dignity. So Achebe asserts that a writer would be satisfied if his works are taught to readers and they understand their past with all its imperfections. That's why Okongo has a weakness. Why is Okongo having a weakness? That basically our past was not perfect, that we are not supposed to romanticize about our culture, but tell the people the truth about our past and all that. So, and through that, we're able to restore our dignity. Then didactic intent. Achebe contends that in our society struggling to find its identity after colonial trauma, the novelist must provide the intellectual and moral framework necessary for national and cultural rebuilding. Yeah, so basically, in Africa, literature has a didactic value to teach the audiences moral values, to teach them about our philosophies, yeah, and many other important things we want to pass. So literature in Africa is not just meant for entertainment. Even if it is a song, there is a moral lesson that the writer wants to inculcate in the audience. There is a moral lesson the writer wants to inculcate in the audience. So instructive potential of oral literature. So oral literature serves as a communal classroom, utilizing narratives, proverbs, and songs to socialize individuals into the ethical and cultural fabric of society. And as we have always said, one of the major functions of oral literature is to educate the audience. According to Finnegan, 2012, the use of archetypal characters and animal fables, We are able to explore moral dilemmas and the consequences of deviating from social norms and the consequences of deviating from social norms. So these stories are not merely for entertainment, they are pedagogical tools that transmit indigenous knowledge, history, and living values from one generation to another. So by engaging the audience through performance, oral literature fosters a deep sense of communal identity and collective responsibility. And collective responsibility. For example, we look at the story of Abu Nwasi, the story of Abu Nwasi. I just want to tell you one of the stories, and then we see, and then you tell me we discuss some of the lessons that we get from the story. So among the Swahili, there was Abu Nwasi and the neighbor. There was Abu Nwasi and the rich neighbor. So the rich neighbor did not like Abu Nwasi because he always looked poor. So one day, the rich man rises up and goes to the ocean, to the beach, and then he sees a golden bottle. He picks it because of the gold, but when he opens it, an ogre appears out of this particular bottle, and it threatens to swallow Abunwasi immediately. It threatens to swallow Abunwasi immediately. Then not Abunwasi, I'm sorry, the rich man. It threatens to swallow the rich man immediately. And Abunwasi, of course, was not there. So the rich man went fishing. And after fishing, of course, he never caught anything, but he saw the bottle and wanted to do what? And wanted to open it. He saw the bottle and wanted to open it. And an ogre emerges out of this particular bottle. And it now threatens to eat him. But after pleading, the ogre promises to eat this particular man uh, if three things agree to eat. If three things agree to eat, let me just look for a nice, uh, a nice place, a nice place. So that I finish the lesson. Yeah, so the ogre threatens to eat the man on condition that three things agree with it. So they start walking. They walk and walk and walk. Then they meet a cow, and the ogre asks the cow, "Can I eat? Can I eat this man?" And the cow says, "Yes, eat this man, because um, he milks me. He takes all the milk. He denies my calf everything. Sometimes he slaughters my calves and sells them when they are still very young. And he's very brutal. He is very brutal to me. So eat the man." And the ogre was very happy and said, "Yes, yes. I think very soon I'm going to swallow this rich man." Then they walked and walked and walked. Then they reached a coconut tree. And the ogre asked, "Can I eat this man?" And the coconut tree says, "Yes, eat this man. He harvests my fruits even when they are raw. And then he cuts my leaves untimely. He cuts my leaves untimely. And this man is very bad. He's very bad. He does not even remove any weeds around me. But most of the time he harvests my fruits prematurely, eats all of them, and is very, very indifferent. So I advise that you swallow him. And the ogre was very, very happy. Then the third person they met now, it was Abunwasi. And he now asked Abunwasi, now, may I eat this man? And Abunwasi turned and looked at the ogre. And first of all, and asked, first of all, before we proceed, where do you live? Yeah. Where do you live? And the ogre said, I live in this small bottle. And then Abunwasi said, sure, how? Hmm? How can a huge person like you, fit in this small bottle? I can't believe it. I can't believe it unless you prove it. Unless you prove it. Then the ogre, of course, squeezed himself into a small bottle and fitted in there. And then Abunwasi just closed the lid, walked back to the beach, and threw the bottle into the middle of the sea, into the middle of the sea. And that's how the man was saved. And the man was very appreciative. He was very thankful. He almost worshipped Abunwasi. Now, now, from this particular this particular narrative, yeah, what do we learn about environmental ethics and the consequences of human exploitation on nature? Is there something you can learn? So let me hear from you, Felix. Is there something, or which lessons do you learn apart from the normal lessons? Are there some lessons on environmental ethics that we learn from this? There are some lessons. If you cannot speak, maybe you can write. You can just write. If you cannot speak, you can write in the chats. You can just write in the chats. If you cannot speak, you can write in the chats. In the chats. If you can speak, it's okay. You can't. You can write in the chats. Yeah, you can write some lessons. You can write some lessons you have learned. Any lessons you have learned. Of course, this is not environmental, it's not the other unit. So any lessons, you can just give me any lessons, any values you have learned, any values you have learned, any values you have learned. Those are not it. I'm going to I'll fetch chips, All right, all right. Have you? Let me see if you have sent any. Yeah, so there are some moral lessons we find in this story. I can see here. Let me begin from the very first. I don't know why it's not moving. The cow lamenting about how the rich man exploits her, and how the coconut takes her away. So which lesson? Because mostly a moral lesson is positive. A lesson can be negative or positive. So which lesson exactly do we learn? Another moral lesson is that we should love one another without looking. Yes, that's true. Humility is very important. We should not look at the economic status. Abnuasi helps the rich, yeah, who was almost to be eaten by the ogre. And this man was very, very contemptuous, very proud. So we should be humble, basically. And the lesson is that, yeah, we should forgive one another. Abunwasi forgives the rich man and even saves him in spite of what? What he did against him, in spite of what he did against him. Yeah. So also on environmental conservation, there's something we learn. The ogre is actually climate change. The ogre is climate change. That if we exploit our natural environment so much, then nature will give us to the effects of climate change. The coconut tree and the cow, they are giving the man to the effects of climate change, of global warming. Yeah, so basically that story also expresses the need for us to take care of our environment, the need for us to take good care of our environment. So in some cultures, such as the Yoruba, the ecological themes are so deeply woven in the fabric of daily life, they do not require a separate literary category and all that. So we also learn, moral values and also ecological themes, like about this riddle. When you look at this riddle here, there are so many lessons that we get. Like this man who has a cow, and then he has a leopard and grass, and he's supposed to, take them across the river. So, what does he? How will he? How will he do what? Take them across without the goat eating the grass and without the leopard eating the goat. So, problem-solving skills are brought in here. And there's something that we also learn. There's something that we also learn that basically human beings, we are supposed to take care of our environment. We should take care of the animals that are in our environment, and even the leopards, we should take good care of them. That's the first thing we learn. But then there is the question of problem solving. Yeah. How will he take this particular goat and leopard and grass across the river? If we can solve this riddle, then we will have a lot of problem solving skills. We'll have a lot of problem solving skills. So I don't know if you have any presentation to make today. I know I gave you some assignment. And you see Sheila is not even here. She's supposed to make some presentation, and now she's not here. And maybe you can, yeah, are you ready to make any presentation, or you'll make next time? Let me know your opinion. But that was our lesson today. That is our lesson today. That is our lesson today. Are you ready to make any presentation, or you will make next time? Just use chat, let me know. But Sheila was supposed to make a presentation because she is not bereaved. But I don't know why she has even missed this particular lesson. Let me hear you. Just throw a message there. If you are not ready, let me just communicate to me there. I know last time you are not able to make a presentation. Yes, so you can make a presentation next time. But Sheila was supposed to make the presentation. Sheila was supposed to make a presentation. So prepare your presentations so that I can also award you. And thank you for attending the lesson. Have a great evening.